whispers tearing lives, hearts raw scarred. Judges grinning, deals in shadows locked. Caseworkers speaking truth they've mocked. Gunning on for justice, rage intense, bringing kids home from this broken fence. Corruption weighs heavy, laws collapse. Kids go missing behind their maps. CPS stealing kids, no trace. Lies build walls, the truth they erase. Gunners howl, cuts through the air. He won't stop midnight, he'll get there. Dark hallways where the guilty play. Secrets hiding, hope fades away. A man with fire, voice like a storm. Breaking chains, reform, transform. Gunning on for justice, rage intense. Bringing kids home from this broken fence. Corruption weighs heavy, laws collapse. Kids go missing behind their maps. Family shattered, cries dulled by fights. CPS takes them in the dead of night. But Gunner speaks of brighter days, cut through the lies, light ablaze. Family shattered, cries dulled by fights. CPS takes them in the dead of night. But Gunner speaks of brighter days, cut through the lies, light ablaze.
Hey look, this for every mama got her baby snatched on some bogus shit. For every pops they locked out the crib like he ain't blood. CPS, y'all been eating off pain for too long. We know what you on, but now it's war, it's gunning foe. CPS. Kick doors, no warrants, they taking our seeds. Say it's neglect, but they planting they greed. Feds in they pocket, judge got a fee. Run it like a business, adoption spree. Contracts overseas, got partners in France. But shorty from Shy, he ain't get a chance. Mama work 2 jobs, daddy do right, but they still snatch his baby in the middle of the night. Fuck CPS, they ain't saving shit. Just a system full of snakes getting rich off kids. We see through the cap, we done taken the hit. Now it's Suffer Davis popping and we loaded the clip. Gunner got the case, now we in that fight. Taking this to SCOTUS, shining that light. They ruined good homes, now we flipping that script. Time to bring them back, time to empty the clip. They labeled us monsters, called us unfit, but it's they paperwork dirty, all of it forged and flipped. How the fuck they selling babies to a bidder overseas? Then tell the fam you unworthy. Man, please, we got mamas in pain, daddies in tears. They breaking our hearts, been doing it for years. Now we riding with Gunner, and we got the proof. sworn under oath, now it's time for truth. Trump got the team and the pen in his hand. He said bring them home, now that's the plan. You feds been hiding, but it's over now. We moving like an army, and we ain't bowing down. Fuck CPS, they ain't saving shit. Just a system full of snakes getting rich off kids. We see through the cap, we done taken the hit. Now it's off of Davis popping and we loaded the clip. Gunna got the case, now we in that fight. Taking this to SCOTUS, shining that light. They ruined good homes, now we flipping that script. Time to bring them back, time to empty the clip. They ain't gods, they ain't law, they just people. Corrupt people, and when the people rise, ain't no system safe. The Chi-Town, it's the movement. We gunning for CPS, and we coming heavy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wait.
Good evening. Welcome to another edition of Gunning for CPS. I am your host, Gunner. Just happy to have you guys here. You'll have to bear with me. I've just been out of the hospital. I was had to pass a kidney stone, and with the added stress of everything, that if you guys have been keeping up with our Facebook page, all the trauma and everything of federal witness tampering that has gone on this past week. But we're going to bring out, let's talk about this a little bit. We're going to go ahead and bring out, we've got our two guests. We're going to pick back up on our series on constitutional rights. We've gone through the first four. So we're going to recap. We'll go ahead and bring out Sharon and Darren, and we're going to talk a little bit of this, and then we're going to turn the conversation back over, picking up at the Fifth Amendment, and talking about both the legal aspect side of it as well as the psychological side of what these rights do to us, and how they protect both our not only our rights, our legal rights, but what it does to us mentally by having these in place, and why it's so important that these rights are to be followed, because these are considered inalienable or God-given, creator-given rights, that they are not to be compromised, they are not to be swayed, they're not to be questioned, they're not to be bent, that there's no wiggle room on this. But lately, over the past couple of decades, they have been. And recently, both myself and Sharon have experienced the fact of when they do not follow the law, and when they come after you and attack your rights, you got to, and we'll just go over this, but let's bring out Sharon. And Darren's with us, so Darren, when he gets a chance, he can join us. He can bring himself out. Sharon, welcome to the show again.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Happy Sunday. I'm a little tired tonight, but I'm going to do my best to keep up.
Yep. And there's Darren.
Happy Sunday, everybody.
Hey, Darren.
So we're going to talk. We did show the clip to where they showed up at my place with the thing, and we showed that on the Tiff and Punisher show on Monday night of kind of like what they did, the aftermath of having them identify themselves and all their rights, and we talked about that. Well, then after being informed that we were federal witnesses in a federal case, they turned around and went to another state, an adjoining state, Kentucky, and showed up over at Sharon's dad's house and committed the same felonies. And understanding, even in the videos, and you guys have seen me post it online, she's posted on TikTok, so on and so forth, but she asked them to leave. And they didn't leave, they continued on. Matter of fact, they called the police or the sheriff's office out, therefore activating the sheriff to intimidate her, or trying to intimidate her to violate her Fourth Amendment right. Now, remember, we covered that. And let's go over that real quick. That Fourth Amendment means anything in your home. You notice the first words in there. And here we'll just back it up. And let's take a quick look at it from unlawful search and seizure. And this is how corrupt CPS is connected with law enforcement and everything else. But let's take a quick look at it. And here we go. What's that say? The right of the people, us, to be secure in their persons. That means everybody in your house. Everybody in your house. Now, that's pretty wild that, hey, can we see the children? Hey, can we? And no, you were turned away, so you send the law enforcement up. And she asked them to leave if you've seen the video, and then continued, well, can we at least see the kids? You were told to leave. That's where you're supposed to end and go away. But they proceeded, therefore violating the Fourth Amendment rights of not only her, but this was her father's house. Now, her dad, if a lot of you, you guys have followed a few things, her dad was served in the United States Army lifetime, his entire life.
Almost
His entire, okay. But here's the thing. He wasn't even there to defend his own home that they were trying to break into. His rights have now been violated. Am I correct in saying that, Darren? Okay. You're on mute there, Bubba.
Yeah, say that. Repeat that one more time so I know exactly what you said there, because I missed that.
Okay.
That first.
So because it was her dad's house and he wasn't home, she was there. They were trying to get into the home to see the people, the persons, which is covered under the Fourth Amendment. His rights have now been violated because it was his home.
Right. Well, right, because she's just a guest there. So
yeah,
their first question should have been, who's the owner of the home and can we speak with him? Because she can't give them permission to enter somebody else's home. She's got to be able to, only the owner of the home can say you have permission to come into this house. I mean, that's one thing that nobody talks about ever. They just think that, but it's right there. She's not the owner of the home. How can she give somebody the access to their home if she's not? I mean, she's a guest there. She has no authority whatsoever in that position or that capacity to even allow them on that property.
But wait a minute. Shouldn't the deputies have known the constitutional rights in the Fourth Amendment when it come to the home?
Well, I mean,
even after being told that they were rejected?
That's the question.
No due diligence, violation of their oath.
Nope.
So now we've got this. But I don't think a lot of people have triggered something yet. And Sharon and I were just discussing this earlier. Sharon, who's one of the senators out of Kentucky?
I believe Rand Paul is a senator here.
Oh, you mean the libertarian Rand Paul, the constitutionalist?
Yes.
Oh, so you mean they've done this to a veteran, that now a veteran is going to contact a senator that has violated the sovereignty of the state of Kentucky. Oh, this is going to get good, guys. This means that once he's contacted and then he gets involved in this, he now becomes a witness on the stand in our case. Uh-oh. Can you imagine what Rand Paul, seeing his debates and his speeches on the floor of the Senate Hall, is going to say? I mean, Darren, you got 2 cents on this? I know you've watched Rand Paul go off several times. Adding this down to a witness list is extremely powerful, is it not?
It depends on how much Rand Paul wants to hold the. Look, we can all call ourselves a constitutionalist. We can call ourselves whatever, but it's where the pavement hits the road, right? Like, is he going to really act on these
Here's
things?
his chance.
Are these people going to really, are they going to become, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I'm a constitutionalist. Well, the sheriffs are supposed to be constitutional sheriffs, but are they? No. So where's it hit the road, man? Grow a set of balls and become the person that you say you are. That's what I say with all of this. Until these people prove, because I don't have any faith in our politics services anymore. I don't have any faith until these people prove that they are who they are. And you know what? They can call themselves Santa Claus, but you better bring me some goddamn gifts if you think I'm going to believe in you.
Well, I'm right there with you, but I'm going based off of this conversation with what I have seen him and how he has expressed himself on the Senate floor and on several committees and about the Constitution and how it's so sacred that now he's going to have a firsthand experience in his own state, that his own state's sovereignty has been violated by another state with no probable cause, no crime, no open investigation. She hasn't even lived in the state for these false accusations to go, let alone they were notified. Now, I don't know if you guys have seen the video, but I'm sure she could turn around and tell you from firsthand experience, the demeanor changed when you said, would you like the case number? And you gave it to the deputy, the demeanor, everything changed.
I could kind of see them, like the wheels of their head turning, like, okay, do we need to go talk to our boss? Do we need to go talk to a judge? What is really going on here? I honestly, truly believe that the caseworkers did not give them the full picture. I don't even know that the caseworkers had the full picture. It's not my problem. It's not my fault if Tennessee did not give them all of the information. However, the second that I was able to give them the case number from memory, it was immediately like, oh, we better check on this, and then we probably better get out of here.
Now, Darren, under the law, even though there was miscommunication or anything else, that doesn't negate their responsibility for breaking the law, and no warrant, let alone.
They swear an oath. They swear an oath. And that oath is to uphold what? That oath is to uphold what? The Constitution.
The Constitution.
Now, if you don't know the Constitution, then you should have never sworn to an oath, and that means that you didn't even know what you were swearing to, which makes their oath to them void ab initio, because they didn't even know what they were swearing to. So they're not even legitimate law enforcement if they can't even have the knowledge to uphold
not legitimate
what
law
they are supposed to be swearing to.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, in essence, they allowed themselves to be used as retaliation and intimidation when the caseworkers were
absolutely
for valid reasons.
Well, and it proves
you can't retaliate either. I mean, that's
well, and that's exactly what it showed within her videos, was the fact that CPS showed up and said, I'm not allowing you access. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. Therefore, they called law enforcement for one reason and one reason only, to intimidate and coerce against constitutional rights. And it's as clear as day.
Right. Well, the first thing is, and I think the first way to go about this is just this. What happened to Southern hospitality, right? You ask permission before you go and you speak with someone on the property. Hello, Mr. So-and-so, is your daughter here at your home? Can I speak with her? That's not just a thing. That's the way procedure works. That's the way you're on someone else's property.
That's protocol.
They had no idea. They didn't do anything correct. They didn't do any due processing at all. And they completely violated your dad's, your father's property and his rights to the property.
But
that was his property, not yours.
I mean, that's the issue that we're all having, right? Is the system and law enforcement, especially, is too easily weaponized against the people. I mean, they can't get a court order. They can't get a warrant because there is nothing for them to get one on, but they're still going to violate people's rights. And CPS has way too much power to be able to use law enforcement in this way. It's a problem.
But we just proved by their actions with what they did is now provable in court of interstate commerce to traffic and intimidate and to break the law.
Correct.
That means if it's happening between Tennessee has the right to go into Kentucky, that means they would do it to any other state. Wow. That affects the state's sovereignty. They're not a federal organization. You can't cross state lines.
Right.
Your authority and everything else at what we got a referral, that's too damn bad.
It wasn't even
what happens in your state stays in your state.
I don't
regardless
even courtesy call is supposed to be, because they aren't my babysitters.
Well, and there's no, and you articulate in there's no open case.
No.
And if they've got a report, the report that they were saying that we had broken their supposed unconstitutional restraining order, that's a criminal act. CPS is not to be contacted on that. That's a law enforcement, and then they go get a warrant with proof with a witness. And there was no proof. So people don't realize how good this goes. Do they, babe?
What?
They don't understand how deep this goes now. Because here's the thing. If you lied about you got a report to not only try to break into my house and try and get and coerce me to enter to do a search, let alone now you've crossed state lines with a false report CPS has generated, this now begs the question of how many other times have you done this? This automatically opens a federal investigation.
It should, yes.
Oh. So there's a lot of work we have doing. That's why a lot of times, guys, I'm not going to have a lot of time to answer stuff.
So let me just keep, I don't want to interrupt, but I'm going to. Sorry. Let me just read this to you. Right? There's something called the the Uniform Child Custody Jurisdiction and Enforcement Act. This is, what people, if they don't know what this is what the guidelines that people have to follow, or these people have to follow to go across state lines. Okay. Now this is it. The following flowchart provides a step-by-step approach to determining whether a court has jurisdiction over a custody case under the UCCJEA. First question is there an emergency, temporary emergency jurisdiction? Is there an existing custody order and or custody proceeding in another state? If so, do they have jurisdiction to modify any orders or to issue a new order? If there's no emergency or existing order proceeding, do they have initial child custody jurisdiction? If they have jurisdiction to enter an initial custody order or to modify an existing order, are there any additional considerations? So those are the questions that you have to ask before you can cross state lines. And I don't believe that you guys had any of those things involved. Did you?
None.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
None.
So therefore, there you go. There's an answer.
She's in a different state, has been in a different state. None of it's been violated. Therefore, if it's been violated, present your witness and your evidence, because I can tell you you're lying.
Mm-hmm. So,
and you're going to have to deal with other things I'm not even going to reveal on the air, because
look at there it is right here. This is the university. Yeah. I'll put a link up so you guys can grab this. So anybody that doesn't have this, but here you go. This is the complete guide to the UCCJEA. It's 96 pages. This tells you everything you need to know about crossing into state lines, getting their jurisdiction for child custody issues. And I'll guarantee you, CPS fails in every level of these things.
Every bit.
This is the entire guide. I finally found it, Gunnar. But yet it's still, and this thing was enacted in, I think, like 1967 or 68 or something like that. But this is all of it right here, and nothing in here did I find that you guys even come close to following. What went
not
on
even
there.
close.
So,
let alone the constitutional rights in her video. She said leave, and we have a federal case against you.
Wow.
So if we have a federal case against you, you're not supposed to tamper or intimidate us.
Not to even mention, it's supposed to be voluntary, and you're supposed to be able to refuse services. So on top of everything else, I refused their service. I didn't want it. I had a valid reason to refuse their service, and they still used law enforcement to try to intimidate me and get me to comply.
Yeah.
That's psyops tactics. Like, that's terroristic, honestly.
Oh, it's a form of domestic terrorism. It meets. Matter of fact, I posted that. The DOJ's definition of. Matter of fact, I'll look it up here. I remember I posted it on my Facebook page of the DOJ's definition of what domestic terrorism actually is. And give me just a second here. I'll have to scroll through a few things.
I'll be right back.
But I'll we'll look at this stuff, and like I said, Um, it's it's pretty clear. And one of the other things that we're going to start using some of the change things is, they just raped our constitutional rights. I mean, did they? Did they not? I mean, yeah, they molested our constitutional rights. So let's go, I'm going to change this up, and I'm going to go to the Post. Let's go to what the DOJ says. Okay. The Department of Justice. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Not too big. Let's go to this. Okay. The Department of Justice defines domestic terrorism as violent criminal acts committed by individuals and or groups within the United States intended to intimidate or coerce the civilian population, to influence government policy or affect government conduct by mass destruction, assassination, or kidnapping. What were they trying to do? They were trying to kidnap her kids. That's what they were after. That was their intent. So, yeah, right there, we have a legitimate argument to turn around and say, does this not take and meet the DOJ's definition of domestic terrorism? Yes, it does. And that's that's going to be our argument. And I don't think a lot of people realize this in using these words of saying, give me the definition. They were looking to kidnap her children, saying that a crime that had occurred that had never occurred, to steal her children and to intimidate or coerce her. But we had a filing. Now you can't. And the FBI is now involved. They've been notified. Matter of fact, they had Sharon talk to them directly while the officers were standing there and gave them, what's those officers' names?
I was on the phone with them when they showed up, yes. I was on the phone with the FBI when the deputies showed up. And I did inform them that I was on the phone with them at the time.
Yeah. So, guys, there's our quick recap. I know a lot of people have been asking about it, so I hope that clears some things up. Yes, we are going to be busy this week. Her dad is back in town. I believe he has several conversations and such that they're working on their side to deal with. I know I've got some things to work on. We've got some major things coming up that we are going to be working very hard on our case, probably in the latter part of the week. Part of our team is going to be getting together in the latter part of this week and knocking out a lot of the different things. We have now got some clarification on some names and identifying some people. So we need to update our filing, but we have to update our filing now, as well as doing what is called an expedited TRO and asking for an expedited federal injunction hearing. And the federal injunction hearing means this whole thing between, the restraining order and everything else is gone. In other words, the stuff the state has on the record trying to keep us apart and do all the stuff that they've been doing will stop by a federal court order is what's going to happen. And now they just give us every bit of probable cause to get it. I really don't see a single thing. And I know Darren, what's your opinions on this with this amount of overwhelming evidence? I really don't see this not going through, let alone there being a federal investigation that's spawning off Kentucky.
Again, I mean, I guess I can't reiterate enough. I mean, this is clearly, look, we know that the rules and the law is on our side, the way that things are written, the Constitution, everything. We are in 100% the right with the situation. However, it's up to the man in the devil's suit that's at the courtroom to rule this way. And if they keep their oath, because really everything points in the directions of a victory for this side, no doubt. Like, these people have completely violated how many more rights can they violate?
Everything. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
but they don't want this case coming out.
And then here's the other part. This is where I don't like case law for this reason, because yes, you can find case law that works in your favor, but then you're going to also find case law in some other places that will rule oppositely, because these are just opinions. And people have to remember that case law is not the law. Case law is nothing more than one person's opinion on how they interpreted what the law was and then how they ruled on it. There's no mandate that says that they have to follow case law, but they recommended that they should, especially if it comes from their own district or their own jurisdictions. However, people are trying to use that as law. So you really have to dive into how much case law now goes against what we're arguing here and see where that fight is, because that seems to be where the problem is lying in a lot of these court cases, is that they're pulling case law out of their ass that's going against the Constitution or where it's been favored that way. And of course it's going to be. These people are all corrupt. They're all ruling against the Constitution. So it's easy to find that case law. So that's the only thing that I see standing in the way.
We are really hoping and having faith in the judge that the judge, I don't know, a lot of you have heard, but the judge that is in our case that we will be discussing and having these petitions to was appointed by Donald Trump in the first term. And this is a constitutional court on civil rights and constitutional rights. And from this guy's history, he don't play. If you go look back at everything that he has done, it has been hardcore, nose to the grindstone. It's constitutional law. He's not even going to play with it. And I really foresee, to be honest with you guys, a very, very huge ass chewing, because the first thing he's going to demand is produce for me the person that made the report that caused all this. And when that doesn't exist, and come to find out it's CPS in Tennessee that has fabricated all this stuff, I would even say that maybe there's a possibility that the judge would put sanctions upon these people on top of anything else. I mean, because this is now going to go before a grand jury to indict these people for crimes. I mean, because the crime for federal witness tampering and intimidation is up to 20 years in jail criminally. I mean, we're talking every person that was involved, from my house to her house to anybody behind the scenes, is now complicit or a co-conspirator in a federal crime.
By law, yes. But then you have all of the ifs, ands, or buts when it comes to other people. But I love the fact that we're doing this. Like, we requested a trial by jury purposefully because we were not given due process in anything that has been put on us thus far. But I absolutely refuse. I refuse to not give somebody else their due process rights. Like, that's
oh no, absolutely. No, and this is what I'm saying when I said the words "go before a grand jury." That is the proper process, that this evidence will be brought before a grand jury on all these people to have a federal indictment on them, to be brought into a court and a federal arrest warrant put on each and every person, to where they will be arrested. This is now a federal crime, and there's going to be a full federal investigation of why and how this happened and who participated. Every bit of it.
Yeah. But I mean, my point is, we talk all day long, but ultimately it's going to be up to a jury to decide who gets held liable, who doesn't. Like, we understand where the law lies, but Darren's right. Sometimes it comes down to the man, and we don't know what the odds are going to be when it comes to the other people who end up being involved. But ultimately, I want to see this go through due process, because that's the way it should rightfully be done in the first place.
Oh, absolutely. That's due process that has this now. Other acts do not require due process, such as treason and sedition. That becomes a military issue, and you are stripped of your rights. Uh-oh.
But I think, doesn't somebody have to decide that you've actually committed it before they turn you over to
all
them?
You have to do is have enough evidence that it meets the standard, and it rolls over.
Okay.
The feds will take and pick them up and turn them over to the U.S. military, to the MPs.
But there's a process that goes through first, right? Like, you just can't be over. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it is. Yeah, but it's not done in a
Genuine
court of law. It's whether or not the evidence actually is determined. Um, Treason and sedition, I believe that's done by the U.S. Attorney General, which is Pam Bondi, that would look at these things. But once again, right now in our country, it is swaying back in the way of the Constitution. And when something like this goes on, and yet alone you're going to have a state cry, I would assume a state like Kentucky cry about its sovereignty has been violated, and it was not followed. There's going to be a lot of that too. So it's not just us. It's going to be what the state of Kentucky is going to cry against the state of Tennessee and those people, as well as their own people.
I feel like we're
And
a lot of people not having understanding about their rights in the first place,
Yeah.
though.
So,
I'm not
yeah.
sure how loud the outcry is going to be, really. But I mean,
well, like I said, once we see knowing your dad, I don't think he's going to be quiet. And at the same time, getting Rand Paul in there and a few others, and we're getting some of the political momentum going and some of those other things with very outspoken people. Here's their chance to make the difference. I think, like Darren said, they're going to have an opportunity. But let's move forward into the meat and potatoes. That's a little catch up. Let's go into the Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment says no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment, sorry, it's hard for me to read and you have to give me a little bit here, or indictment, or indictment of a grand jury. That's what we were talking about, is this evidence would go to a grand jury as well as our testimony of what happened, but the video's there. The crimes are there. That's all there is to it, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces. In other words, military forces, or in the militia. Under military, then it goes under military law or military code of conduct. When in actual service in the time of war or public danger. Well, isn't this public danger? The public's in danger from this happening to everybody. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense twice. In other words, that's double jeopardy, to be put twice in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against yourself. In other words, I'm giving up the fifth, that I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. You don't have a right. Let's go on. Nor be deprived of, here's the best part, nor to be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, which our magistrate did that. We're going to now steal my property from me. No jury, no nothing, no due process. Nor shall private property be taken for public use. In other words, the judge says, well, we're going to use it just in this case to keep this person safe, or we're going to steal it from you without just compensation. In other words, you have to be paid for it. So let's talk about that. I mean, that's a lot to absorb, because you're feeling safe in your home and everything else. I mean, when it talks about it, but it says, you can't use my own words against me. You can't do this. You can't do that. But you guys realize this applies to children too. Yeah. Oh, now, Darren, I mean, let's be clear. The law does say that does cover children, doesn't it? For their constitutional rights.
You know what? I hate this one too, because it's been used against me. In my case, I had a criminal case that was running parallel with my CPS case, and I hadn't gone to trial yet for my criminal case, which it was a substantial criminal case, which also was dismissed. But I had 147 questions asked of me, and every one of those I pled the Fifth Amendment. Now, what that judge was able to do, or unable to do, but did, was use what they call an adverse inference. That means that the judge is going to use her own determination and her own, thoughts and process and all of this stuff to find me guilty, even though I pled the fifth this entire time. So again, here is where I used the law the way that the law is supposed to be used, and it's supposed to work to protect me. However, these judges that don't follow their oaths of office, that use these little loopholes and this little bullshit, so no one stands on them, now got to use. So not only did she not hear what the truth was, but she got to determine for herself without hearing any facts that I was guilty, and she used that against me, and that's one of the reasons that I lost my kid. So
Yeah.
there's the Fifth Amendment for you.
But even beyond that, after you were cleared from that, they still stole your kid and never turned back your kid, even after being found not guilty or the case
Yeah,
dismissed.
not even not guilty. They dismissed all charges because they didn't have the evidence to charge me. So,
So then CPS has therefore no foundation to keep you from
yeah,
your kid then under the law.
that's the way the perfect world works. But this is CPS land, and that's what we're doing. See, there's the reality of what it is, and then there's the reality of what our country says it's supposed to be, and we don't live in that. We live in the reality of where we are right now, which is just overrun by tyranny and bullshit and people's power trips and everything else. We don't live in this world. Just like the whole thing with the driver's license. Like all of these constitutional rights that we have and that we're afforded by the Constitution, we are neglected every goddamn day. Every day they take these rights away from us, and nothing is done about it. So they're slowly just creeping in. It's just like you say with the cursive writing. They're even going so far as to take away cursive writing so that people can't understand what these things even say. That people don't know how to read these things. So they're every day
Don't
they're
know
taking
your rights.
more rights, more rights, more rights, more rights, and it's our fault. We were allowing this to happen. We go to the courts, we say, okay, but then again, on the others, you flip it over. We're only one people, and this is where people get this mindset. We're only one person. If I don't go with what the court says, then I'm going to be arrested and I'm thrown in jail. And then what? Then your voice doesn't matter at all. So what we need to do is realize that we need to stop this independent living that we're all doing, and we need to all come together as a whole and beat this thing, because the government is much larger than we are right now. That's more. That force is giant.
And Darren, this is what I love about people after they've been doing the affidavits of how many people have been filing their own federal case and connecting the cases together to show this is happening all over the country and show it's not just an isolated incident, let alone there's talks. I think somebody else on there that's actually a what do you call it? Somebody that petitions, a lobbyist that's actually out there, that there's actually something coming coming up on a bill here soon in 2025 about CPS and family courts and really cracking down on them federally with federal law. I believe. What's that?
You talking about Mark Ludwig?
No, this is somebody completely different. This is somebody
Oh.
that's actually a true lobbyist and has been a lobbyist for families' rights in DC. She actually follows me on Facebook, and I had saw her post say, "Hey, here's an upcoming bill that they're getting ready to propose about CPS and family courts and the crap that they've been doing to raise the bar federally, even for them to take and do it." And I'm just like, "Hey, that's great." But I would much I think all of us would just agree that it just needs to be abolished and completely gone because there's no use for it. If there's a crime, a true crime against children, that's what we have law enforcement for.
Correct.
Supposedly.
Because abusing a child is a crime. So you should be arrested and you should be put in the criminal justice system.
Absolutely.
And here's the other thing is that no one is listening to what the higher courts are doing. They're not until we establish that these lower courts don't, or they have a chain of command that they have to listen to, because what the states courts aren't doing are listening to the federal courts. They're
exactly
about this. 200 years ago, we had a war that fought the same thing. Are we going to be a federal government or are we going to be a state-run government? And it seems like we're at that crux again, where which one matters more. And it seems like the theories on this have flipped. Because
and
we can't use
cases like this,
state's power, and we can't use the federal power against the state. This is why we're in this conundrum. We fought the Civil War because the South said the states need to rule themselves, and the North said no, we need a federal government. Well, now here we are. We have states governments, we have a federal government, but now we have a fight again because the federal laws don't match the state's laws. So how can this be enforceable? How can you say that one thing is enforceable and then the state rules it differently? Like, this is where our problem is that we've allowed these two roads to collide again. And they knew 200 years ago that this wasn't going to work. But yet, now 200 years down the road, we're doing the same damn thing again. We're using the state laws to protect us, but when those don't work, we flip to the federal laws. So how do you get the federal laws to be enforced in the states, and how do you get the states to realize that the federal law trumps them? That's where our problems are.
There's got to be a
Well,
balance.
and
Those things and true
well,
enforcement, I'm going to win this.
exactly, and that's where the FBI was supposed to come in to do and balance that, is to force these states or people that are breaking these federal laws to come in and do what they're supposed to do. But then you've had mass corruption that is now, I believe, truly being dealt with for the first time in decades, especially after everything that happened to JFK and all the other things were happened. And now that's all being revealed, and the deep state, the corporation, everything else, it's been officially, it's officially dead. DC is no more. It is now just Washington. If you guys didn't know that the ceremony where the Army presented the flag to the president, that was the flag of the District of Columbia, which was the corporation. It is now dead. It has been overtaken by our military, which is why all that changed, which is why a lot of people don't go, well, I don't understand why he took and does all the tariffs. You know why? Because the deep state and the District of Columbia and all those negotiations and treaties are dead and null and void. That's why they were all able to be renegotiated across the board. People just don't get what's happening in our country. And I think a majority of them don't.
And I mean, you're talking generations worth of stuff. I mean, we weren't raised to learn any of that. The generation before us didn't know all that much. The next generation coming up behind us doesn't know too much. Like, we're all learning as we go. And I mean, that's really sad.
Yeah.
It's quite the learning curve for all of us. But I mean, none of us knew.
But see, one of the things too that's so illegal about this, of even going through these civil courts, is saying that you have a contract with the state or something like that, and let alone Tennessee itself. It's funny. Well, that means you to have a contract with it, not knowingly. If you've coerced or anything else, it wasn't disclosed or anything else, and children are not property of the state. Now, they're going to argue that, well, yes, children are property of the state. Then you have violated your own state's constitution, because in the state of Tennessee's constitution specifically says people are not property of the state. So that argument's done or done. And if you admit it, you know what's going to happen? You just admitted to committing treason against your own state. Uh-oh. But when you're talking about crimes or criminal stuff, which even like with the bullshit that they try to pull on us, there was no grand jury hearing to indict anything or anybody. We're just going to slap a criminal charge on that with no grand jury, no jury at all. And this is what CPS is doing across the nation in a civil court. Well, we have a right to slap a criminal charge on you in civil court. Yeah, when you get a grand jury for a criminal charge, when you don't have a indictment by a grand jury, you don't get it. And when you don't have a jury, that's a due process violation.
I think that's one of
which is what the Fifth Amendment
too, is that the lines seem to be blurred and crossed between criminal and civil right now.
It doesn't matter. The Constitution.
That's how they're operating. That's my point. Is that's how they're operating on the state level.
Oh yeah. Oh, they're operating like you're a business, and a business to business has committed some sort of business crime, or SEC versus Jarsky, where it applies. Administrative law judges. This isn't a corporation. We're individuals. We're living human beings.
Well, but they've used it as a corporation. I mean,
how they structured the courts,
it's all about the funding. And if people, if we had money,
but we forget
from elsewhere, we wouldn't need to, traffic our children to bring the funding in. Just saying.
Yeah, so it's a Fifth Amendment.
Well, don't forget too, Donald Trump absolved that corporation. Remember this? Donald Trump absolved the corporation and put us back to our country. So that's been done. So we no longer go under the rules of the corporation.
And the states are having to take, and they're fighting it. That's exactly what you're seeing in the courts. But even in my case, I have to claim a Fifth Amendment right. Why? No due process and no grand jury. They decided they were going to do what they wanted to do in the case.
Well,
And it
actually,
was only,
right.
and here's the thing, they got to pick and choose because it was the state versus me and her, but I was the only one that was dealt with it. Now, wait a minute, then you should have separated it. It's either all of us together or one. How does that even make sense, even as far as the, how it's structured in your complaint?
Yeah, I
That
don't know.
doesn't make sense. Which SEC versus Jarsky is saying that you were violated, you were doing this with no what? Not having a grand jury, or you have the powers to penalize people or do these things on here. That's just mediation, which is what you're supposed to do. Mediation means to come to an agreement, is all you're supposed to. But when on the other side is seeking something that's criminal, that's not a negotiation. That's them. That's mob technology. That's illegal and intimidation. That's coercion, intimidation. That's completely illegal in this country.
Yeah.
And they're able to do it. But now due process, a right to a trial by jury. Well, if you have a criminal case and they're going to try and come after you for a criminal, whether you're in a criminal court or a civil court, you still have a right to a jury. But when you don't, that is called a kangaroo court. It's not legal. Let alone you go back to the Constitution, and Darren and I have had this constantly. When you have a case where it is you versus a member of the state, whether it is the Tennessee, the state's Department of Transportation, whether it's Department of Children's Services, whether it's this or that or anything to do with the state or local government, that who does that has the original jurisdiction under the Constitution itself? Article 3, Section 2, Clause 2, where the state or any member of the state is a party. In other words, defendant or plaintiff. The Supreme Court has the original jurisdiction. Then why is it in state court? The reason it was put in there was to eliminate the bias and eliminate exactly what's going on. That one, they cannot argue. What's it say on your paperwork? Your state, my state, Department of Children's Services. This is that. You can't hear the cases.
Right. And how do you how do you even face your accuser when the state is the party?
It's
Who
not.
is your accuser? I mean, there's no separations of power there. There's no separations of power. You're facing an entity that is just, and it's just that, it's an entity. But courts are supposed to be, you have the right to your accuser.
Yeah.
Who is that? And that needs to be a person. It can't be an entity. It needs to be a person. We're not businesses.
Exactly. All of this, Fifth Amendment. No person, no living, when it talks about person, it's talking about living people, has to answer for any of this stuff in the court. It makes it an illegitimate court. You're saying that a crime has happened. Well, if a crime has happened, you have a criminal code to it. You got to have a grand jury to indict, whether it's federal or civil. It doesn't matter. It applies to both courts, all courts. And it says, unless it's something during military and wartime. Well, we're not in wartime. None of that applies. And once again, same offense. In other words, you can't be tried for it twice. But yet, wait a minute, we went through an appeal. And the whole appeal process, hey, we start over, so we have to go through it twice? Is that not the same thing once you go before the magistrate and then before the judge in the civil court, you're facing the same crime twice? That's right there. That's another violation of the Fifth Amendment. That's going through two hearings.
Well, you're not convicted. You have to be convicted of that crime, or you have to be dismissed of that crime.
Yeah.
That's so. Like the grand jury, for instance. And let's get something clear about the grand jury. The grand jury, their job, well, first of all, that you are allowed and you're supposed to be present for a grand jury indictment on yourself. They all do it in secret, but because first, who is the grand jury? Have you ever even heard of anybody going in front of a grand jury or being part of a grand jury?
Yeah.
And where are these people and who are they? Because that's what I would like to know, who the hell they are. Because So the prosecutor can go there in front of this jury of your peers that are in secret, and they can tell them one side of the story, and then they don't get so that's even worse than the preponderance amount of evidence that you're found guilty under.
Another violation
So
of due
and second,
process.
the job of the grand jury is this. It's called the true bill when you get found guilty by a grand jury. The only job that the grand jury does is give the government the authority to go ahead and start charging your social security accounts and all of that stuff. It's a true bill.
Yep.
That's why it's called a true bill that they receive in the courts, because it allows the government to start authorizing payments from you coming out of your quote unquote straw man account. That's exactly what it is. And no true bill means that, guess what? You cannot start billing this person. There's not enough evidence to bring them to a trial. But here's the thing, is that they can go back and the grand jury can re-indict you upon information of new evidence or supposedly new evidence or this, that. It's a 99.9% chance that it happens. And in my life, it's happened. Not to me directly, but to my wife. And this is all part of this case too. So now that's not double jeopardy either, which is kind of weird that the grand jury can't find enough evidence to indict you and they drop those charges, but yet they can come back and get found at that. So double jeopardy, even in the civil courts, even if you win in the civil courts, it doesn't matter as far as double jeopardy goes to the criminal side, because double jeopardy can only really be used in the criminal side of the courts. And unless you're found guilty, not guilty, a dismissal actually at that point of judgment, then they can do whatever they want as many times as they want to.
So let's move on. Now let's cover a little bit here, and let's go back just real quick, and let's cover this. What does that do to us? And Sharon, as our psychological, we'll say our mental health expert, how important is this to feel that you have these things in place so you don't feel railroaded? I mean, these things are pointing in there to where, hey, I was indicted by this, I was done that, but when all of that is stolen from you, and they've stolen your house, and they've violated your rights, and they're coming after you, the psychological aspect is you feel overwhelmed by a large force.
Yeah. So essentially, our constitutional rights are boundaries between us and our governing body. The government is made of the people. They're our representatives, and we, the people, it's complicated, but there's a boundary line there, right, between us and our governing body. And the idea is to protect us from being railroaded, and it's to protect us from tyranny, and it's to protect us from an overreach of power is what it is. And when that happens, and the governing body or persons of the governing body overreach their power to trample and to go through those boundaries, it's like dealing with a toxic ex in a way, or a toxic person in your life.
Okay.
So
Wow. Okay.
think about it like in a way. I know you guys all know like the term narcissist. There are others out there. In fact, there's a whole like dark triad of mental situations that you can end up with in situations with people. And when your governing body oversteps their boundaries and tramples and railroads you in that way, it's as if you're dealing with a toxic partner.
Yeah.
That is the impact that it has on you mentally, physically. It is trauma. It is trauma.
Now, this is why I tell people the importance of the Second Amendment. Because once you get to the point you feel you have no recourse, and this is happening to you, and your rights are just being railroaded and this and that, the Constitution does give you the ability, and it says it in there, not only do we have a responsibility, we have a duty to remove that, even whether it's by the courts or by force. So in other words, and a lot of people have had this now. Darren, I'm going to ask you a very specific question, and I'm going to give you a certain scenario. You've got a CPS worker or a police officer that has knocked on your door, no warrant, no court order, no emergency, just saying, hey, we got a report, and then begins to push their way in or come into your house and enters your house without a court order, warrant, or emergency. Now, we know the law says that they are stripped of their title and stripped of their immunity. They are basically saying that they are no better than somebody breaking and entering. That under the Constitution, we therefore have a right to exercise, if we so choose, our Second Amendment right to defend our home. Now, am I wrong in saying that?
Ooh, there we go. Well, let me put it to you like this, man. Now, I'm not going out there and I'm not saying that.
No, we're not advocating for violence. We're talking about
I'm not advocating
the
this.
law.
I'm not advocating this. But I'm gonna put it to you just like this. I just was reading this thing here, and I just want to read this to the people, right? This is what it says. The Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made pursuant thereof, and the treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. The judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the constitutional laws of any state to the contrary are notwithstanding in the law.
Ouch.
So you put that in your book and use that for what you want to say for the question you just asked.
And here's the thing. They're going to say whether or not it's justifiable. Well, if somebody's coming into my home and my children are here and you're armed and you're coming into my home, or you're a CPS worker and you're breaking into my home, I fear for the safety of myself and my children. That is probable cause to defend your home, even if by force under the Constitution. That's the law.
So if I'm,
All right.
since we're kind of tracking with this mental health wise, when you have a boundary line between partners, right, that does not negate the fact that sometimes behavior needs to be held accountable. So my partner has the right to hold me accountable if I cross a boundary line. Just so I have the right to hold my partner accountable when they cross the boundary line. And that's kind of the same, in essence, idea behind that.
So if I'm hurting you, you have every right in crossing your boundary to what? Self-defense.
Correct.
That makes it clear, I think, for everybody.
Yes, and vice versa.
Yeah, here's another one.
I mean, it's the point of.
No, go ahead.
I mean, maybe not necessarily by force, but there needs to be a line where your partner is being held accountable. So if my government body,
let me clarify that.
My boundaries, I need to have a way to hold them accountable, but vice versa, they need to also have a way to hold me accountable if I cross the boundary line.
The point is, if I tell you to stop and you don't stop and proceed, I can then exercise force, is what the law says.
You're allowed to exercise enough force to separate yourself. You're allowed to separate yourself from the situation that you're in. You can't kill someone. Well, you might kill someone, but you're not. Your intentions are not supposed to be.
That's not the first thing.
Like if you got into an incident with somebody and you literally sat there and beat him in the head with a baseball bat 37 times, you're going to jail for murder.
Well,
you hit him in the head baseball bat one time to separate yourself from the defense so you could get yourself to safety. That's the difference. If you shot someone once,
well, now hold on, Darren. That depends on the state's castle doctrine, because some states do have a retreat clause in it, but in Tennessee, this is a stand your ground state. I don't have to. I don't have to retreat under the law.
No, but I don't think stand your ground means that you can sit there and you can voluntarily murder these people now.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a difference between self-defense and overkill. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. And if you go into the confines of the law, yeah, you have to stand your ground. But I mean, if you shoot someone in the leg, they fall down. That's it. As long as they're not in any way threatening you any longer and stand your ground, then you cannot continue to proceed with force. You have to vacate that thing.
The idea is stop the action for the crime or boundary crossing legally within that to eliminate the threat. If you feel that person,
right, nor can you shoot them in their back. If you shoot someone in their back, if they're running away from you, you cannot You cannot shoot someone in the back and stand your
that's the
ground.
last.
If they're fleeing you, you
Well,
have to
now
exalt
hold
them.
on. Now there has been some incidents with this and that as they are pointing away, they turn to run away. Yes, you can shoot them in the back because that incident has actually come up in a very close situation I'm aware of, that somebody did try to break into somebody's house, and as they pulled up the gun, they began to turn away as they were coming in, and they shot because they were already passing in the threshold. That depends on the state's castle doctrine.
Oh yeah, if they're I mean, I'm talking like if they're like 20 yards from your house and they're clearly
Oh,
vacating your
absolutely.
property or
Common
something,
sense. Once again,
you can't do that.
let's not pick
The
apples and oranges
is-
and this and that. Let's
is-
use some common sense.
That's
Yeah.
like last resort. Like
Right.
my life is on the line, my children are in danger type situation.
Oh bullshit! You come to my house and I don't want you. I'm shooting you. Period. End of
Yeah.
story.
So, but the point
I don't. You know, my life is always if you're coming in and I wasn't expecting you, and you come in an abrupt, surprising manner, and I wasn't expecting you. As far as I'm concerned, my life's at risk, and I'm shooting.
Well, and you know what was funny, Darren, is when they showed up here, and anybody that knows me or anything else, I've got weapons stashed all across the house in a safety manner. So if they would have barged or rushed the door, I am fully capable of defending myself, and you don't stand a chance. Because one, I have a tactical advantage that this is my home, and I have your area. Everybody goes, well, this and that. And I go, well, wait a minute. One place that they have vests or they have this or that. Headshots are growing shots. Sorry.
Right.
There ain't nothing there, and you better think twice, because here's the thing: headshot, yeah, you've got something here or there, but you hit that femoral artery, you're gonna bleed out, and once again, bam, and that's gonna go on and hit a femoral artery. It doesn't matter. You're gonna sit there and ain't nobody gonna get you in time because you hit that femoral artery in the leg. And listen, they're going to teach you this in any tactical shooting thing or anything. It's whatever it takes to stop your assailant. Did I shoot to kill? No, he bled out. So you can't get me for that, but he's going to have to bleed out.
The point
Medical attention
is that the Constitution was written to put a boundary line in between, but it also has on both sides the ability to hold each other accountable. And there was supposed to be balance in that. Like there's supposed to be a balance in that. We just don't have it's out of balance right now. It's
there's a YouTube thing that's just recently come out that I thought, and I got to tell you guys about this in our audience, is that there's actually a guy that has crossed the line that is now going into city halls and everything else, and they're going to the front desk and going, do you realize there's a organized crime organization that is operating out of this building because you're armed? This person's armed. This person's armed. This is this is like a secure location. This is supposed to be free and open to the public. Why do we have intimidation of all these guns around? They've been asking hard questions. Yeah.
Right. They're not supposed to be. But Sharon, what was it that you just said? The last thing that you just said right there was what was the question?
It wasn't a question. I was saying that
well, it was a statement question, but you're saying it was being what? What was being done?
So there's supposed to be balance, and everything is out of balance right now. Like we're supposed to be holding.
Right, everything's out of balance. Why? Because we challenge what the Constitution states. That document was never supposed to be challenged.
Nope.
It's not argument. It's supposed to be set in stone.
Absolutely.
And those things that are on that Constitution are supposed to be as is. No ifs, ands, buts. That's it. And so many people are trying to now dictate what it means, trying to say what if, and they're completely, it's just going haywire.
We've been invaded politically in our school systems and everything else with socialism and communism. And in this country, that's a crime. Oh, yeah. Y'all didn't know that?
The crime is not sticking to the Constitution that was supposed to prevent all of this in the first place.
The crime is instituting another thing other than our freedoms in our constitutional republic, and the idealism of socialism and communism in our country is a criminal act. It is actually a criminal act. There is a code and statute on that. For you to promote communism and socialism is an actual crime. Is it enforced? No. Should it be enforced? Yeah, and maybe had it been enforced, we wouldn't have gotten this far.
Well, and that's it exactly. Like, who decided that the state was best for our children? Like, who decided the state was a better option for children than being with their natural born family?
Our children.
I'm not
And the
ignoring
Democrats had that
that there are
conversation.
some children out there that absolutely need a little more support
But
and help and protection. Absolutely. I will never argue that. However, who decided that the state was a better option than that child's
well, it violates the Constitution because the Constitution isn't about the greater good. The Constitution is about individual liberties and freedoms, not what the group decides. Everybody says, well, our democracy. No, our constitutional republic. And we
Correct.
still hear that word today on the news and out there and everything else by our politicians and everything else. Our democracy, our democracy. We do not have a democracy. We have a constitutional republic that is based off of individual rights and freedoms. In other words, you can do whatever it is you want to do so long as you don't infringe on or violate or molest or rape my constitutional rights or
Correct.
property. There's the simplicity of it.
But under
When you
that,
cross that boundary line,
yes, that's a problem.
now you wonder why we're so upset, and Sharon will tell you what that does to the brain. What happens when you're constantly violated? What's that called?
It's trauma.
What's the CPS word? Abuse.
Oh, well, it's
You're
actually
abusing us.
the government is using coercive control at this point. It's all coercive control. We're all being forced into these boxes where we don't belong. We're all being forced into these courts where we don't belong. Our boundaries have been crossed. Bottom line, our boundaries have been crossed. And that's very detrimental to our mental health. It's detrimental to our ability to live freely and to follow, our life goals and all that. I think that individual liberties is a fantastic thing because it holds all of us in a space of being accountable, but also being able to hold accountable. And under that, we also have the ability to come together and work as a community, as long as we're respecting each other and each other's boundaries. And I mean, that's the bottom line, is the boundaries should not be crossed.
Well, and it comes down to that then a group of people can't get together and force another group of people to do something. That's where the true freedoms come down. That's where the gang mentality stops. Isn't it funny that the schools do all this thing about anti-bullying and anti-bullying, but the very fact of the things that they're doing is teaching bullying, but not by other students, but by the institutions that are teaching them.
Their no tolerance policy is actually teaching children how to depend on somebody else to hold their abusers accountable instead of being able to hold their abusers accountable themselves. Does that make sense?
Well, let me put it to you this way, and Darren's going to chime in here because I know he is. We're old school. Back in the day when we were growing up and everything else, if somebody got out of line and did anything else, whether it was another man beating on a woman or beating on a child, you didn't have to have the police. You didn't have to have the sheriff.
No.
We went and took care of it.
No. You didn't want them around.
They were there to clean you up
But they
afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
But then they institute laws prosecuting us for defending our very liberties, which actually is unconstitutional.
It actually took a lot away from us as a society too, I think.
Yeah.
Because it basically tied men's hands to hold each other accountable. And
well,
I mean,
what's the difference? Let's just say, God forbid this never happens to anybody. Your little kid was raped. What is the difference between the father going out, cutting that man's balls off, killing him, whatever, in the name of justice for him and his son, and the state coming in now and handcuffing this person and charging him with a crime and so on? What's the difference? Why is the state any better, and why does the state have any more reason to do that than I do as a father to get justice for what this just happened to my child.
Well, and see, there's a loophole in the law too with that too, because technically, if it's a justified killing, the only thing that you can get in trouble for is improper disposal of a body. So technically, if you dispose of the body properly or under the law, and it's a justifiable killing, technically there's no crime.
Educational purposes only. We are not inciting or encouraging violence of any
No,
kind.
I'm saying this is what's on the books that was there. This is why law enforcement never came around when it came to some of these situations to where men dealt with things as men, and they just turned around and they looked at it and they just kind of just like, yeah, justice has been served. Because you know who gets to make that call on whether or not any of that goes forward is your local sheriff. And then what it was is all the pussies that wanted to get away with shit, and these not manly men that wanted to get away with weird shit and all the other things, saying, well, woe is me. I can't defend myself, therefore I need somebody to defend me. Big brother, come get me. It wasn't about that. It's when they crossed the line of doing something, hold them accountable with some of the other things. But the idea is men were men and you didn't do this stuff.
Yeah.
But you're talking about not just men, well, that you're condoning this, that. No, we're talking about men of integrity, men of respect.
Well, and we're also talking about, let's not forget that these rules and regulations and stats and the statutes and codes and all of this stuff was never meant for the people. This was meant to keep our government in line. So all of these things that Congress has passed, all of this stuff was meant to keep sure that our government. So in all reality, these laws that are being created and all of these things are for them. So they're not supposed to be doing these things, not us. It has nothing to do with us. That's what all of this was about. Somehow they flipped the script and they now turn the statutes and codes and laws and rules onto the people instead of the people turning it onto the government. Somewhere along the lines, that thing switched over.
Absolutely.
To be honest,
sociological level, I'm just gonna say, like, what does that do to a family if somebody comes in and hurts our child, but we have to wait for the cops to show up and I can't depend on you to do your job to defend us, and I can't utilize my ability to defend my children, but I have to wait for somebody else to maybe or maybe not show up and maybe not listen to me. Like, that's so much away from family in general. It takes away from men, it takes away from women, it takes away from children. Like, we can't even count on our own, like, household to be able to.
Don't you think that's the plan? Don't you think that's the plan, though, Shannon?
There
you go.
Government control over the family.
They want to degrade the family, make them weak, make them powerless, make them feel inferior. And that's the whole idea of big government. That's what they want you to feel and believe and think that it is. And that's it. You just nailed it right on the head. They're trying to make us feel inferior. Going away from what our original ancestors wanted us, what our
not just our ancestors, Darren. This falls under God or creator laws. This was from our creator. These things are endowed for us to do this as men. And for everybody, and then you have this whole thing of men don't need to be violent. No, they need to be violent as hell. They need to have a monster, a complete, utter, off the path psychopath inside, but have it under control in a leash and in a cage to where it's there when you need it. Because if you don't say you don't, you better go look back not even a couple generations. You had 15, 16, 17-year-olds fighting for your damn freedom across the world in world wars. And you're telling me you don't need those monsters inside? Yes, you do.
Look at Governor, just like this. Just in that. What's like the one, probably the biggest turn on for any woman is having a guy defend her against some attacker or against someone that she doesn't want, to go up there and knock a guy out that was making fun of her or whatever. Like, there's no way more that you could turn a woman on than defending a woman.
I get that.
That's just a natural sensation.
But in our society, though, it has changed to where a lot of women, how many women actually have any honor left? And this is the younger generation. Now y'all calm down with me. But you've got to understand, we don't have men being men and women being women to where women didn't have to have. They had a sense of, there's a word that you cannot even use today with women of the modern age, and that is the term sultry. a mystery. Why?
I'm so glad you said
Because
that.
there is no fucking mystery.
Yeah.
Everything's out there and all this other stuff, and now I'm a badass bitch, or I'm this, I'm that. No. Well, I've had to do this. Why? Because you have softened the men not to be men. And yes, there were a few assholes that overstepped it and all these other things. And I love how everybody turns around and goes, well, women got the right to vote because of this and that. And you all need to go back and look at your history, because it wasn't about voting. It was about land ownership. Women couldn't own land. When they were able to own land, which is what that was about, they automatically got the right to vote, because back then the only way you could vote was if you were a landowner. It wasn't about women's freedom and this and that. It was about land ownership, and with that came the right to vote. But it's been twisted. You've been lied to. You've been thought it's about this and that. No, it was about the old-fashioned way of when her husband died, she had to return to her father. Well, what happened to that property? Well, that went back to the son's family, and they absorbed it, and the woman went back to that, or was absorbed by that family. And that father or the patriarch of that family overtook that land, or they went to go stay with their brother. If their brother wasn't married, the brother then would be obligated to marry then the widow and then take over and work that particular piece of land. They didn't want that. They wanted to be able to do that on their own, say, this is still my family, I want to do this, and if I choose to remarry or I don't, why do I lose everything and my children lose everything, all their inheritance? That was the question. And that was why it came through. But we have been lied to even in our history of saying that, well, it was about this. No, it wasn't. Remember, when we realized they lied to us about JFK, then the question became, how much, and Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and how they were all executed by the CIA. It's all been released. MK Ultra is real. The word conspiracy theorist was a word when you got too close to the truth. It's something the CIA slapped on you to discredit you. But there were facts there. It was people with a hidden agenda. But it never used to be like that. The big stock market crash of the 1920s? You know what that was due to? Mm-hmm. Was when we switched over from tariffs, paying for everything in our government, to the income tax paying for everything. And all of a sudden there wasn't enough work and people paying in taxes because it was voluntary. And therefore the whole system collapsed. And it caused the Great Depression.
Women started going to work right after that, didn't they? Like during World War II. And then all of a sudden women had to work.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing for women to work. Please don't get me wrong. But you can see the pattern in history, like, oh, well, we've got the fathers out of the home. Now let's get the moms out of the home. Now we can raise children.
Let's eliminate this stuff as far as work. Let me tell you something. The most impressive and most rewarding thing a woman could ever do would be to raise the children and raise the next generation and include your values, your history, your traditions, and everything else. And that is more work. And go, well, it doesn't get paid. Do you know how shallow it is to receive money for your services than it is to know that you're investing in the next 2-3 generations? You're right. It's not getting paid, but it's being paid anymore. You're getting paid a monetary compensation for your time and skills to do what? Because you want to buy everything. Why don't you start learning how to trade like we used to, and you don't need the money except for certain things? They have psychologically manipulated you into this money system. Why? Because if you've got something I want and I've got something you want, you know what we do? We figure out a way to barter. You know what happens then? No sales tax. None of this, none of that.
You know what else they took away from us is, because I do believe that the greatest thing you can do is raise your children. But I also know how exhausting it is to do it by yourself. But in taking us out of the home and putting us to work, it took our community and our village away. Like, none of us
gave them full access to the children, too.
We don't have time to sit and chat and have sewing circles and this, that, and raise our kids together. We don't have time. We're too busy running around trying to pay all the bills and take care of everything. it's exhausting. And
Or
it's
learn the medicinal
valid.
medicine that doesn't come from big pharma, those family traditions and homemade recipes and those things to keep your family healthy, and the right foods and what's good and what's bad and what's been passed on from generation to generation. That is all now gone, because how many of you out there can take and tell me that you've got recipes from your great grandmother or even your grandmother anymore?
I mean, I
Few of
do.
you do.
Yeah, maybe.
But hey, look what they've robbed. Can you tell you your family's history, how you know your heritage of where you came from the old country, and how
Well,
far you can trace it back, or what world wars they've been in, or how they've served this country, or the things they've done and or possibly invented in this country?
but isn't that
They
exactly what
took it
they're
from
taking
you.
away from every one of these children in the system? They're
Yep.
And
taking
what's the
That's
first thing?
exactly
all
what
of
they
that
do.
away from them.
And what is CPS? What's the first thing CPS wants you to do? If you're homeschooled, what's the first thing that they want you to do?
And
They
over,
force you right into public schools.
yeah, if they can find a way to do it, they will.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
because that's more money for what? Local government. It gives them jobs.
It
Why?
all
Because
back
they
to
don't
them.
want to go out, and I'm going to say this, because they don't want to go out and get real jobs with real companies in a competitive nature. They want, so I'm going to feel safe working for the government all my life. No, wasn't designed that way.
Mm-mm.
There was not one job created by our founding fathers that was supposed to be a lifetime position serving in our country, either elected or appointed. It was supposed to turn over constantly.
Well, it's supposed to also be a group effort, and they sure as heck are leaving us out of a lot of the conversations at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's such a separation between us and some of our elected and appointed officials. They don't even realize what's going on. I mean, when you've got people doing backdoor deals that finally they're going after them for insider trading and some of the other things like Nancy Pelosi and some of the others of the way they vote, or knowing a vote's coming up to move their shares and make all this money to where they only get paid X amount of dollars a year, but all of a sudden they're worth millions and millions of dollars every time they go into government. I mean,
Yep.
what was it shared, Darren? What was it, $250,000 a month that Obama was getting paid as a special advisor, or something like that, or 2.5 million, or some crazy stupid number that Obama was getting to meet with Joe Biden every single day or something. I
I'm
mean,
sure
as his advisor at a cost to this country. That's not a, yeah, we don't need advisors like that. Those are people you're supposed to have a job, do your job, and then report back to me, like a chain of command. You
Yeah.
know, give the general the information, and let the general make the decision on what's going to happen and whether he's going to delegate here, here, and here. That was the problem we were dealing with the president when the courts were trying to decide and say, well, we're going to run the country, the courts. No, the absolute power is found in the president, and that was already decided. And then SCOTUS turned it over and goes, no, the Constitution is very clear. So let's move on. Let's get through a couple more of these here tonight. We're going to go through the Sixth Amendment. Okay. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial. But wait a minute. Okay. By an impartial jury of the state and the district. In other words, this is why we have federal district courts and stuff like that, with jury that deals with state representatives or your peers, and a district where the crime shall have been committed, which jurisdiction shall have been previously ascertained by law. In other words, they're talking about dividing up the judicial branch of government and breaking it into jurisdictions, okay? And to be informed of the nature and the cause of the accusation. In other words, you have to tell me what I'm being charged with, and to be confronted with the witness against. Oh, wait a minute, I have a right to face my accuser. So when they do a forensic interview and there's no cross-examination, the forensic interview that you guys, if you guys are dealing with that, is null and void unless you're allowed to cross-examine. That's federal law. So once again, this is something that happened to us. We're just going to play this one-sided position. We're not going to allow my attorney or Sharon's attorney to cross-examine the witness. Matter of fact, let's deal with that real quick. Sharon, what did the GAL for your kids actually tell you to do with the children?
They said don't bring the children to court at all. And in fact, I think that's pretty common across the board for GALs. They don't like the children in court.
That's a violation of your constitutional rights right there. So if you've had a case to where you've had a forensic interview, or they're telling you this is something to do with your children, and they're not able to be cross-examined by your attorney or yourself, if you're self-representing, it doesn't matter. They have to allow that. That is law. That is federal law, and a lot of it is state law too. They're passing. Matter of fact, even Tennessee has that law that our judge and magistrate violated. Specifically says that it must be put in, and they have to be able to cross-examine. Okay, let's go through here. Which the district shall previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses. Notice the plural. Got to have more. That witnesses, that means plural. It doesn't say witness. Uh-oh. So you mean to go forward, we have to have the plural version to move forward?
If there's plural.
That is plural. That is not singular one person. Uh-oh. We have a problem.
I don't know how that works, because what if there's only one witness?
Once again, then there has to be evidence to support that.
Well, I mean, obviously, supposedly.
Yeah, well, once again, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor. In other words, you have a right to call your own witnesses, and to have the, hold on now, I want you guys to read this. Guys, you got to pay attention to this. And you guys listen to me. How many of you have been read your rights and said, and you have a right to an attorney, right? Do you realize if you've been read that, you have not been read your rights legally? And you go back to the 6th Amendment, and what does it say? To obtain witnesses in his favor and to have the assistance of counsel for his or her defense. Counsel, you have a right to counsel. Now, Darren, what does Black's Law Dictionary describe as counsel as determined by the 6th Amendment?
Any person that can represent you in your court case that you find that's viable to represent you.
Does it say anything about having a license?
No, it doesn't.
In that?
No, it doesn't.
Ladies and gentlemen, that means when they're advertising for an attorney, they're advertising for the State Bar Association, which is solicitation. That's a criminal act because the state can't solicit for a private organization.
Interesting.
Uh-oh. You see how they've changed that and how they've violated that? Your Honor, I was never read my rights. Well, what did you read? It says right there, the right to an attorney. Your Honor, let's read the 6th Amendment. It says counsel. And then they go to take and go on and say, well, that means an attorney. You've just interpreted the Constitution and you don't have the power to do that, Your Honor. A state court doesn't have a right to interpret the Constitution. What does? That becomes now a federal question, a change of jurisdiction that you would file with the federal court under civil rights, under constitutional question. The federal courts then has to make that determination. It says counsel. Well, is not your priest counsel? Oh, it's not your husband or wife counsel? Do you not counsel each other?
Can be, I suppose.
Does your rabbi counsel? It says nothing about that, nor does it say anything about licensing. Do you see how the bar has now infiltrated the states to violate the Constitution itself?
Well, now, I'm not sure the world is ready for the licensing illusion, honey.
Listen, This is where a lot of people, like we know some people that have had this charge, especially with advocates and everything else, to turn around and say, well, you're giving, you're practicing law without a license. It says right here, I have a right to counsel, not a lawyer, not an attorney, says counsel.
I think that's just how
Assistance.
so long.
Now hold on, let's break this down. Assistance of counsel, which means you're the primary. They're only assisting. Oh, wait, let's read that. Assistance of counsel, aiding you in your thing, not taking your place, aiding you. So you're not even supposed to have a lawyer or attorney or anything else arguing your case for you. As they say, well, you have an attorney that's representing you. Unless they've done it under false pretenses under contract law, because the Constitution specifically says they're only supposed to assist you. You're the primary. So when you speak up in court and says you have an attorney, that's good, Your Honor, they're only here to assist me. Read the Constitution, Your Honor. See, now, Your Honor, you took an oath. Your attorney's supposed to be over here, or whoever you choose as counsel is to aid you, to help you articulate. You're supposed to be doing it. But what did they do? They fooled you. It's what the Constitution says. I'm not making this up, guys. It's right there in black and white. We have some strong arguments, and we now have some strong questions. And you guys out there filing your own cases, especially in federal courts for civil rights, you can now ask the judges that you're going to go before, Your Honor, interpret this. What does it say? Because witnesses is plural. Number two, it says counsel. I could counsel, and look, Michael Jennifer Bresson made it very clear. If you're a Christian or a religious person of Christianity, it says it calls the Holy Spirit your counselor by your belief system, which is backed up by what? Your First Amendment right. Your Honor, I have counsel. Who? The Holy Spirit, under my First Amendment right of my religious beliefs. See, you got to know how to articulate this stuff, and they can't laugh at you. Your Honor, you laughed. Your Honor, well, I'm asking for you to be disqualified because you don't acknowledge the fact of my rights. You don't acknowledge the fact that the Holy Spirit is this and that under my religious beliefs. That means you're going to disregard the Constitution, which is a violation of your oath. So you got to know how to have these things and put it on the record and even get to the point. And everybody says, well, you have to exhaust everything in the state. That is a lie. If you have had a constitutional rights violation by a magistrate, you can go right into a federal court under constitutional rights violations. You don't have to go to the civil court or the appellate of anything else. Why? Your rights have been violated. And the state doesn't have jurisdiction over constitutional matters. I mean, Darren, speak up anytime if I'm wrong about this.
I got nothing to say. You're not wrong. It's just plain and simple.
Guys, this is why we're going through the Constitution for you, to show you this, to give you the psychological aspect, the legal aspect, and go through and read it for your damn self. Because when you realize what it actually says, you realize how much illegal shit they're doing. Now, that may get me a little red flag on some of this and that, but we're talking about when they don't do that. That is a constitutional rights violation when they don't follow this to the letter. Mm-hmm. It means your rights have been violated, which means what? Fruit from a poisonous tree applies, which means it ends. It stops. And they can laugh all they want. Go ahead and laugh, because guess what? I'm now going to charge you for violation of your oath. And guess what? I'm not going to take it to a judicial review board. That who does that? The same bar association that has penetrated each and every state, the American bar. It's corrupt. Who has to answer that question? The federal courts. Then why are you complaining to The bar association, yeah, go ahead and run it through and maybe it'll go through, but file your federal stuff because those are the ones that has jurisdiction over your constitutional rights, guys. It's just that simple. That's why we're going through all this stuff. Let's go through one more, and we're going to go through the Seventh Amendment. Wait a minute. Jury trials in civil lawsuits, but wait a minute. You're in civil court. You're in family court. Oh, we're going to love this one. Here it goes, guys. In suits, wait a minute, at common law, but wait a minute. They're on statutes and codes, so it's not a common law court. So right there is a violation of your Seventh Amendment right that you're in a family law courtroom that deals with common law or civil lawsuits. That's supposed to be a common law court where the value in controversy shall exceed. We're talking about money. Then why are you dealing with family matters in civil lawsuits? You're not supposed to. These family courts were created by the states. They're unconstitutional to even exist. It says when it exceeds $20, well, what is the value of your family and everything else that comes through this? The right to a trial by jury, how many shall be preserved? In other words, you must have it. How much money did you spend? How much money was taken from you? What are they looking to see you? What is a monetary value? Because they're going to put a monetary value on the child when they take and they get those numbers and they take out these bonds. There's a monetary value. Then you have no trial price. This is what SEC Jarsky was talking about. A right to a trial by jury, due process. SEC versus Jarsky. They said the other one back there, the Chevron doctrine. You don't just to keep going on. You got to have due process. You got to do that. A jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any other court. That's talking about appeals. Otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States. In other words, that's saying right there, I don't have to keep messing with the state. When you haven't done these things, my appeal should go to the federal courts. Then according to the rules of common law, but they don't practice common law in state courts, do they, Darren? So these civil suits that you're having and everything else on statutes and codes is not even a legal courtroom.
We wouldn't even be in court most of the time if we still practice common law.
I have yet to see due process in any of these cases. Not a single
because
one.
It's statutes and codes. Therefore, do they have jurisdiction? No, because they're not a common law court for civil lawsuits. It's right there in the Constitution. It says Seventh Amendment violation. You even brought me in court because it says it has to be a common law court. Go ask them, are you a common law court? No. Seventh Amendment violation. You weren't even supposed to hear this case. Mm-hmm. Ouch. They can say they have jurisdiction. Show them the Seventh Amendment and put it on the record. Are you a common law court or no? Because this says civil lawsuits. Very clear. Guys, it's there in black and white. In suits at common law, which is civil lawsuits. This all goes back to the Constitution. This is why they're violating, and Trump has called out administrative law judges for being unconstitutional. They're only supposed to, they're breaking the Constitution right before you.
Well, and the point to that was to make sure that there was more than one perspective in the mix, and one person or one entity was not making the final decision.
The bias.
Yeah.
Because when you go into family court, who do you face? A state-appointed judge or magistrate, a state-appointed, GALs, and all these other things, and what? A state entity. It's bias in the courtroom. You're not going to get a fair trial.
No.
This is why we tell people, as soon as you have a constitutional rights violation and you first go before your magistrate or they drag you into court and you got a Fourth Amendment right, change that damn jurisdiction and claim fruit from a poisonous tree. You can't go any further. I don't give a shit what you, and if they try to press on, well, you got to get, I even heard people say, we got to have permission from the state. No, I do not. because you don't have jurisdiction. I'm going to ask you on the record, Your Honor. Do you have a right to take and determine constitutional law? Do you deal with things at the common law, or are you about states and statutes? Well, we're in a civil courtroom or a civil setting. Under the 7th Amendment, it says civil lawsuits and everything else. You don't have jurisdiction because it has to be a common law court. You just admitted this isn't a common law court, which means you're going against your oath. And when you go against your oath, you're doing what? You're committing war against the Constitution, an act of treason, Your Honor. Read
also,
it.
make sure that they have a court of record, that they are a court of record also.
Yeah. Guys, we're telling
Make
you
sure you
how to
ask them.
fight your cases, even on the state level, to wipe them out with the Constitution. And when they laugh at it, tell them they just committed an act of treason. And I'm going to file in the federal court, and I don't need your permission. Because the federal judge is going to love this, because I'm going to put that in my complaint of what you said. And all this is on the record. And it's going to be called to the record, and the judge is going to call and ask for these transcripts, whether it's a video or something spread out, and he's going to read it. And then he's going to bust your ass. And then he's going to arrest you because you just committed war against the Constitution when you don't follow it. That's part of your oath. Your oath comes before your duties of statutes and codes for the state. But you haven't done that, have you? You've done what your buddies want. And well, Amy, they can call them whatever they want, wards of anything. The court, nothing. It's the state. It's not even a legitimate court because it's statutes and codes. They have no legal right. Every state has a clause in there that the people are not property of the state. So for them to claim wards of the state goes against their very own Constitution. But you got to put it on the record and put it in front of them, and then change the jurisdiction and wipe them the hell out. This is how you remove all of them. But they're not going to teach you this. This is stuff you should have been taught in high school. This is stuff you should have learned growing up. It's how to do this, because you'll notice back, as we said before, your right to counsel is to assist you. You're supposed to be the one up there. That means you were supposed to be properly educated. And when they paid federal funds to do so, they took it under the terms of fraud. The Department of Education did it under fraud, which is why it has been defunded. There's no more federal money for the Department of Education. It's gone. It's now up to the state. But the state is now liable, both criminally and civilly, to educate you on your rights.
But I think the point that everybody is missing and not understanding is all of these were supposed to be our responsibilities in the first place. That's what a jury is.
Boom.
We are responsible for holding our neighbors and our friends and everybody else. Like, we're responsible for holding each other accountable. We're responsible for holding our government accountable. We are responsible for raising our children. We are responsible for taking care of our community. Like, these are our responsibilities that our government body has taken over.
But when our elected and appointed officials and actors' very goal is to destroy families, how can any of this happen? Which is why they have put us back in slavery and in chains, because now it's not. Pull any kid off the street just graduating high school, as Darren pointed out at the very beginning, and we've talked about several times. Can you read this original document of your rights? Do you completely comprehend and understand what it means? They don't.
No.
That's what they want, to enslave you and continue. But instead, what are your kids worried about? Video games, isn't it? Internet, more distractions.
Being able to pass the next test and regurgitate the information they've been force-fed.
You're not learning nothing. That's what they want you to do, is just follow the handbook, follow the instructions, just like putting something together, like a factory worker, like it was designed. Do you realize our Department of Education since it's been taken over and been federalized and everything else, since what the 19, what was it, during the 50s or 60s when they got involved with it, that we have become an even worser, more ignorant nation across the global thing. And yet we want to compete with things like China. Well, they get more school, they get more this. You guys ever studied stuff that goes on in China and Japan and this and that? They do some schoolwork. Do you realize how integrated they are, even from a little child, to cook, clean, function, and go into society before they even start school? That their children can cook and clean and almost maintain themselves before they even go into school?
I mean, y'all should really look into the history of how school even started. It's outrageous, actually.
Brabson, I'll be honest with you. You know where you need to be starting constitutional rights is when they're a toddler. You need to be explaining and training your children up. See, that's part of the family's responsibility.
Our
Is that
responsibility.
even as a child, though they will do this, and trust me, my kids, we didn't get it. We, like I said, I come out of public education. Now going through this, you don't think that my children are all not getting hammered and getting educated with this, let alone my grandchildren will be educated and hammered with this from the very beginning, and understanding what the Fifth Amendment is, and the word piss off.
Mhm.
I plead the fifth, piss off.
All our children
I
are
plead the fifth,
Mhm.
get your hands off me. Those are called boundaries. You're going to be taught boundaries and circles of trust. And just because you have that little blue, or, you know, we were all conditioned to believe every person in blue is your friend, and all the firemen are your friend, and all these people are all heroes and good
Yeah.
people. Guess what? That's a fucking lie.
unfortunately.
Mhm.
Because why? Now they are an enemy of the people by their actions.
But that was
And
the
they
whole
have just demonstrated it this week.
point was to get us compliant and complacent to believe that the government body, the governing body, and all of its actors were there for our benefit. It took away our responsibility, put it on the people who they deem worthy, and then use those people against us.
Yeah, every bit of it. I mean, that was the purpose of taking over with big government, and that's the point of it, is the government, and that was the a lot of the one side of the aisle, the Democrats had even come through. The children belong to the state, the children belong to the community, the children belong to this, that. It takes a no, it takes a village or a group of people to raise a child. Yes, absolutely, but it's
It
still the responsibility of the parents and the family.
it is.
Doesn't give them a right to it. It just means you help build that child and educate that child up. That's all it meant. Once you cross the boundary line of saying now you have a personal stake in it, or it's something that belongs to you, no. I have a responsibility to myself, to my
Mhm.
family, and those I come in contact with, to be who I am. And when they need assistance or help, I'm to help and or aid where I am capable and possible to do, because it benefits my community and my society. But it's not a demand. When you make it a law or a statute or a code, that's a demand that I must. And that is crossing the line of constitutional rights 100%.
Yeah.
Wards of the state, Florida mom, is actually against your own state's constitution. Because for somebody to be a ward means you're property of the state, and if you go back to your state's constitution, all 50 states have it. The people are not property of the state. It violates that, and until you start bringing that out in court and people start educating yourselves, because once you're educated, you guys will notice between the video we did that we showed here and the one that Sharon did, especially the one that Sharon did, the amount of education and being able to articulate that stopped everything. It stopped them from proceeding forward because they knew they were in trouble, because she was able to articulate, you are now messing with a federal witness. I have asked you to leave. I'm going to ask you again to leave. When I asked you the first time, you should have left. Now you've committed a crime. When you
And
don't
that's
leave, when I tell you to leave, now it's a crime of a Fourth Amendment right violation of questioning on private property, which is a seizure under the Fourth Amendment.
And it's not an easy thing to do, and it's really intimidating. But if you know your stuff, you know where you stand, you know your rights, and you're able to speak them clearly and articulate them, you're going to get a lot further. And actually, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that on my show tomorrow, to be honest.
Tomorrow night, don't forget Beauty and Ashes tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They're going to cover more of the psychological aspect and everything else. Deal with that. Don't miss that show. But yes, actually understanding the psychological aspect, and I know she's going to probably deal with this, is having the confidence and the assurance of the fact that under the Constitution, we the people are the damn government, not you. You work for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what law enforcement should be doing? When things go astray, when they happen, like accidents, this and that, to assist and help to restore continuity and peace. But that's not what they're doing. They have been militarized, they have been weaponized, and it's unconstitutional. And now it's not just going to cost one state a ton of money and a lot of jobs. It's going to cost two and even more, because now you opened up the door to show you can now cross state lines, and you did what? Uh-oh. You just made our point. You just gave us the evidence we needed. Darren, what do you think about that? Last moment, we're going to wrap up that's the 7th Amendment, so we'll start up next week with the 8th Amendment. But Darren, some closing thoughts and comments here.
You know what? Keep on fighting. Do what you can do. I mean, there's only so much you can do, and that's to stay with the Constitution and stand tall and tell these people to fuck off. That's really all we can do, people. I mean, until we can come up with a remedy, stay diligent and defend the
So
know your rights, guys.
Tomorrow on Beauty and Ashes, I'm going to have 3 other moms join me. We're going to have conversation. They've all either filed or are working on building their case to file. And we're going to talk a little bit about how that process has been for us, how we're feeling about it. We're going to talk about the psychological aspects of it. And it's like you're working on your case and you're kind of still nervous and have anxiety about it. It's a good one to come to. But
yeah, and we'll get you updated once again next week as things progress. Once again, in the very beginning of the show, we'll try and cover some updates as things are progressing. We've got a lot of things going this week. We've got some meetings to attend with everything that has happened. FBI is now involved, so we're going to have some things with that and make some more calls and make some more awareness. And yeah, let's go, Brandon. And the Constitution is back. And it's time to wake everybody up and slap them with a little bit of, constitutional rights right across the damn face and see how they like it. And let's get some, we're going to get some senators involved now and some congressmen and everything else, because now we've affected, Tennessee has now crossed the line and affected the sovereignty of another state. And that's a huge thing. That is a federal issue. Darren, wouldn't you agree that that's a federal issue, crossing state lines?
It's that and then some.
That and then some. Well, guys, thanks again for joining me, and hopefully you'll join us again next week. Darren and Sharon, I think hopefully you can join us next week. We'll pick up where we left off, and we'll begin with the 8th Amendment. And we're going to continue these shows with going through your constitutional rights and giving you some understanding of what's going on, so you know your rights, your educated rights. And remember, have the confidence and everything else out there to know your rights, stand on your rights, and say that we the people are the government and you work for us, and know that you are in control and you have the power, and that not to be intimidated or coerced otherwise. It's time to empower the people. It's time for the sleeping giant to rise. This is our chance to make our voices and petitions heard. And if not, well, the Constitution is clear after that, what our path is after that. But we're going to take the peaceful path, and this is the way we're going to do this. And it's the only way that we can actually take and do it. And it's what the Constitution says we're supposed to be doing. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you next week. And don't forget to catch Beauty and Ashes tomorrow at 9 p.m. I believe we got Tiff and Punisher going on about 7:30, Darren. Is that correct? Tomorrow?
Yes, it is. 7:30 tomorrow. We'll be. I think we have Mark Ludwig on tomorrow, so everybody should definitely check that out.
Awesome, guys. Don't forget to check into the CPS Breaking News Network on YouTube to get all the shows. They're all broadcast through there if you don't have the specific channels. That's a great thing. We've got our new website coming up. We've got some other surprises for you. Just keep in tune. This is all about us coming together and we the people fighting. And basically, let's go out there and kick some ass. We'll see you again next week. Once again, Sharon, thank you once again. We'll see you tomorrow. I'll be backstage helping produce that show. We'll see you again tomorrow night. And have a good evening. And Darren, once again, thank you for joining us. And we'll see you again next week. Let's just continue to kick ass and take names. And let's bring it back to the Constitution and stand together, man.
Let's do it. Talk to you then.
Let's do it. Kick ass and take names. Guys, thanks again. We'll see you again next week. Have a great weekend. Get ready for that work week. And don't forget, it's all in the mindset and keep your mind strong. You are not defeated. It's time to come together, share that information, and help educate each other. But remember, it's your responsibility to educate yourself and do your due diligence. We'll see you again next week. Have a great weekend.
Family shattered, cries dulled by fights. CPS takes them in the dead of night. But Gunner speaks of brighter days cut through the light.